Welcome everyone to our Packers News Tuesday live chat. Alongside Tom Silverstein, I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers shifted their schedule up a day this week to take Friday off for Christmas, so we're here with you a little bit early. We'll hit on not only practice updates from today, but also we'll take a look at this upcoming weekend's game against the Tennessee Titans in just a moment. Before we get into that, as always, you can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question down in the chat. Tom and I want to hear from you. We'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. The Packers may be getting a familiar face back on the offensive line this upcoming weekend. Center Corey Linsley returned to practice today for the first time in about 3 weeks as he's been dealing with a knee injury on injured reserve. How likely is it that Linsley will be healthy enough and ready to be activated for this weekend's game against the Titans?
Well, that's a good question. It's hard to tell without us seeing practice, but I think we'll get a better sense Wednesday if he's in pads. It's really a matter of, are they using this week as part of the rehab process, which they've done with so many other players coming off reserve lists. They've used 1 week of practice to sort of ease them back in, and then the next week they practice as though they're going to play. So it really kind of depends. But, Linsley's a veteran. He's played through injuries. This is the kind of injury you can wear a brace on. I just kind of have a feeling that they're going to be, as long as they see what they want to see out of him, that he'll play.
The Packers have an opportunity to clinch the top seed in the NFC this weekend with a victory over the Titans. However, it is not do or die. If they don't do it this weekend, as long as they win against the Chicago Bears next week, they still have that opportunity to win the top seed in the NFC and secure a first-round bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. How likely is it that the Packers approach this weekend a little bit more conservatively with injuries to someone like, say, Corey Linsley, knowing that this weekend isn't necessarily a must win?
Yeah, well, there's 2 ways to approach it. I think you do have to treat it like it's a must win. I don't think you can assume that you're going to win the Bears game, but here's why it would be a must. If Seattle loses to the Rams, which that game is played at 3:25 before the Packers hit the field, they'll know. If for some reason Seattle were to lose, if the Packers beat the Titans, they would clinch home field. And so you would want to get that done on your home field rather than risk doing it, in a game against a rival that's actually playing pretty well. And then you think about, if you're going to rest people, it would be that week. If you have everything wrapped up, you wouldn't have to risk some guys who, might be ailing a little bit, playing in a rivalry game that the Bears could care less about what happens to you. So I think that the perfect scenario is for them to clinch by beating the Titans, but it all depends on Seattle losing.
Let's take a look at this weekend's game against the Tennessee Titans. The Packers defense is going to be facing a big challenge in running back Derrick Henry. He is just around 300 yards away from hitting 2,000 rushing yards this season, which would make him the 8th player in NFL history to do so. The Packers defense has been gradually improving over the weeks at stopping the run. However, they're still 21st in yards per carry. How is the Packers defense going to address Derrick Henry?
Well, that's a good question. And speaking, as we have for the past couple of weeks of MVP candidates, if he ran for 250 yards and they beat the Packers, he would be right back, near the top of that list. So how they're going to beat him is be extremely disciplined. You're going to have to probably give up some pass rush to make sure that you don't get out of your gap, to make sure that you're not trying to do too much, because any kind of lunge or move out of your gap, and he's going to just cut right into it. And then once he gets in the secondary, it's over. I mean, we've seen some of these highlights of him stiff-arming guys. It's like Muhammad Ali punching a guy. He just throws people to the ground. And so you have to prevent him from getting into your secondary.
Derrick Henry isn't the only challenge that the Packers defense is going to face. Quarterback Ryan Tannehill is having a really good season. His touchdown to interception ratio is 31-5. It almost is reminiscent of quarterback Aaron Rodgers in some ways. Wide receivers Corey Davis and AJ Brown are also having really good seasons too. They're approaching 1,000 yards each. How is defensive coordinator Mike Pettin going to address the passing game?
Well, he's going to have to rely a lot on Jair Alexander locking up one of those two receivers, and probably rely a lot on Kevin King doing that as well. He's got to play 8 guys in the box. You just can't play Derrick Henry without 8 guys in the box on early downs. And he's going to have to play less of his dime package. Some teams, even if they come out with 3 wide receivers, you still might have to play them in your base defense, or you might have to play them in your nickel. I don't know if he's going to be able to play any dime during the entire game as long as Derrick Henry's in the game. So I think that's going to be the challenge for Pettin, is the personnel combinations. How's he going to use them?
Pettin has been relying on safety Will Redmond in one of his dime packages, and Redmond is dealing with a concussion. He's still in concussion protocol, so that is also something that we'll be keeping an eye on this week. All right, everybody, let's get over to your questions on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us. It is lovely to see all of you. Let's start with Jaron. Our friend Jaron over on Facebook wants to know, what is the update on running back Jamal Williams? Williams left Saturday's game early this past weekend against the Panthers with a hip injury and did not return to play. Williams was nowhere to be found during practice today. He did not participate. Interestingly enough, the Packers have yet to release an injury report. Tom, do you think we'll be getting an injury report today, or are they going to wait until tomorrow for some reason?
No, they're not. They don't have to until Wednesday. Wednesday is the first official day of the work week, and the Packers are changing the work week in order to accommodate for Christmas. So tomorrow they'll issue a injury report. I don't necessarily think that Jamal Williams missing practice today means anything, because they may just be giving him the usual amount of rest he would get during the week. Normally you wouldn't come back to Wednesday, and Jamal Williams isn't a guy that really needs to practice at all. He can come in and play. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's back tomorrow or maybe Thursday. But until that happens, I'm not surprised about it now. If he's not there tomorrow, then you kind of think about it. If he's not there Thursday, then there's more of a chance he wouldn't play.
We'll keep an eye out for you tomorrow at practice, and we'll give you more updates over on Jamal Williams over on PackersNews.com. Thanks, Jaron, for your question. Let's go to Jay over on Facebook. Jay says that tight end Robert Tonyan was a snub for the Pro Bowl. The Packers had 7 players make the Pro Bowl this season, which was a tie among, I believe, the Seahawks, the Chiefs, and the Ravens. Each team had 7, team league high. Tight end Robert Tonyan, not one of them, even though he leads the league among tight ends in touchdowns. How much of a snub do you think Tonyan was compared to the tight ends that did make it? I believe Giants tight end, was it Evan Ingram, also made it? And I don't recall the other one who did.
Hawkinson, I think, made it.
Yep, Lions tight end TJ Hawkinson was the other one.
Yeah, and there's some really good tight ends. I'm not a guy who gets really wrapped up in snubs, especially since some of it, a third of the voting is from fans. So, of course you're going to get snubbed by fans. I don't know. Tonyan's having kind of a breakout year, and typically in breakout years you don't make the Pro Bowl. It usually takes a year after that, after you've put a second good year together. I don't have a huge problem with that. I mean, yeah, he's got some really nice numbers and he's played really well, but I don't think that's the worst snub that ever happened.
If he has another season like the one he's having this season next year, perhaps he'll make the Pro Bowl in 2022. Thanks so much, Jay, for your question. We appreciate it. Let's go over to Frank over on Facebook. Frank, who is chilling out with his cat in his profile picture. Cute cat, Frank. Frank
That's
says,
right,
would defensive lineman Anthony Rush be helpful against the Tennessee Titans rushing attack? Anthony Rush played about a snap last week against the Panthers, and that was about it. We didn't see a whole lot from him. How likely is it that defensive coordinator Mike Pettin would want to use someone like Rush, who is 6'4", 360 pounds, on the defensive front against Derrick Henry?
Well, it'd be great to have that size. You definitely would want that size, but it has to be someone who knows what he's doing, who isn't going to get engulfed by double teams, knows how to get off of double teams, knows how to work with the guys around him. So we don't get to see how that's progressing. I kind of think that if he was playing that well, he would have seen more than one snap against Carolina. But maybe he's their secret weapon, and they're going to roll him out against Tennessee, and he'll fill the middle. He is a giant human being, but you got to be able to still play the game. That's why so many great defensive linemen in college, just don't pan out, because there's a real art to playing the position.
We'll see if Rush gets any more attention or plays at all this upcoming weekend against the Titans. Thank you, Frank, so much for your question. Let's go over to Billy on Facebook. Billy says that head coach Matt LaFleur knows Derrick Henry very well. I believe he will be very much involved in stopping him on defense. Head coach Matt LaFleur was the Titans offensive coordinator in 2018. He was the play caller, and just after one season, he departed to take the head coaching gig with the Green Bay Packers. How will LaFleur's experience and knowledge of the Titans help this upcoming weekend as the Packers seek to take on the Titans?
Well, it doesn't hurt. Now, it's been, 2 years, almost 2 years since he's been there. He doesn't know Tannehill. Tannehill wasn't there. He knows, as he pointed out today, he knows some of the linemen. He knows, of course, Derrick Henry. But a lot of the guys who were there are gone. And so I think he can give some scouting reports to some of the defensive guys. But from a scheme standpoint, I don't think they need him. This scheme isn't that much different than what he's running. And so the Packers defense is used to that. I think it really just comes down to personnel. Him being able to give him a few tips about what a guy can do and what a guy can't do.
Thanks, Billy, for your question. Let's go over to J-Row over on Facebook. They say running back A.J. Dillon had an 18-yard run and he never saw the ball again. What is going on there? Dillon was able to get a few touches, including an 18-yard run this past weekend against the Panthers. However, as J-Row mentioned, he didn't really see the field after that, including the time when running back Jamal Williams left the game. Especially if Williams is inactive or is on a snap count this upcoming weekend against the Titans. How many more snaps do you anticipate A.J. Dillon getting this weekend?
Well, yeah. I mean, first, to answer that question, he should have gotten the ball more, but so should have Aaron Jones. I mean, they just gave up on running it in the second half, or they were kind of hell-bent on trying to get Devontae Adams the ball, and that was a mistake. They should have kept just pounding it, and they should have used Dillon some more. I don't think it was a lack of confidence. I think it was just a bad strategical error. If Jamal Williams can't play, A.J. Dillon will play, and they'll use him. The thing is that Tennessee's defense, their pass defense is ranked 29th. They have like 14 sacks. It's last in the league. So this is the kind of game where you're going to want to throw a lot probably. But, who knows? Maybe they double and triple Adams. Well, then you got to rely on Jones, and if Jamal Williams isn't there, Dillon should get a chance. Either way, Dillon should get a chance. You drafted him in the second round for a reason, so get him on the field.
To your point, Tom, about the Titans defense, let's take a question here from Andrew. Andrew wants to know, does the offense bounce back against this defense? The Packers offense was averaging 31.5 points per game going into last week's game against the Panthers, and then they only post 24 points total. They couldn't even score a touchdown in the second half. How likely is it that the Packers can get back to their high-scoring ways against the Titans?
Oh, I think they will. I think this has the makings of a shootout. I think both teams are really good offensively, and the Packers statistically are way better than the Titans defensively, but it really is going to be who can stop who in key moments, field position, special teams. But I think there's going to be a ton of scoring. I don't think anybody's going to be able to really stop anybody.
Love a lot of scoring. If you're a fan of high-powered offenses, should be a fun game. Let's take a question here from, I lost the question. It is from Jerron. We'll go back to you, Jerron, over on Facebook. Jerron wants to know if there's any update on wide receiver Equanimeous St. Brown. He played, or he was active, I should say, this past weekend against the Panthers. However, he was not targeted once, so he had 11 offensive snaps. What's going on there with him? I know he's been dealing with some injuries. He most recently was in concussion protocol. However, he is back to practice. How many more touches do you anticipate St. Brown getting this upcoming weekend?
It depends on how many times they throw it, but he's going to be a guy who's probably gets 2-3 targets a game. They still got to continue to build Allen Lazard back. Of course, Devontae Adams, Valdez-Scantling, they got to keep him involved. They have to make sure that he doesn't go long stretches without getting some big plays. So Equanimeous St. Brown's going to be kind of a specialist. He's going to come in when you need a blocker, but then maybe it's a play action pass and he needs to get, and he can get downfield a little bit. But he's not an integral part of their offense right now. He's just a guy that, they count on him to play a role, and that's what they need him to do. And when they call his number, he needs to come through for them.
Thank you, Jerron, for your question. Let's go over to our friend Todd on Facebook. Todd says, long methodical drives keep Derrick Henry off the field equals a win. How likely is it that head coach Matt LaFleur tries to utilize the run game, the short passing game, to keep the Packers on the field longer and keep the Titans' offense off the field?
Well, I think the important part, that is a goal, but the important part is to take what the Titans give you if you're Matt LaFleur. So if you get too caught up in the short game, and they're giving you single coverage deep with Devontae Adams or playing a single high safety, then you got to take your shots. I mean, you need to run the ball against them, but don't get caught up in overthinking it. I think that's what they did last week with Carolina. Carolina's just like handing them the run game on the platter. And they said, oh, no, thanks. We'll try to pass it. And I don't think they should do that again.
Thanks, Todd, for your question. We'll take this question here from Jim. Jim over on Facebook asks, are linebackers Kamal Martin and Chris Barnes for real? Both Martin and Barnes have been seeing considerable playing time now that Mike Pettin has been using more true nickel packages with both, sometimes he's using Christian Kirksey as well. However, with safety Raven Green on injured reserve, Pettin has had to get a little bit creative with his personnel groupings. As Jim says, are Martin and Barnes for real? Are they, as good as they have been performing over the last few games?
Yeah, I mean, these two guys really, it's not related to Raven Green. It's more related to Christian Kirksey. They need two guys who can play the run, who are more reliable in pass coverage, comfortable. Chris Barnes is really comfortable playing the Mike position, which is what Blake Martinez played last year. Blake Martinez made all the calls, got guys in the right position, and that's what Chris Barnes can do. Chris Barnes wasn't drafted because he's not a superior athlete. He's not like a difference-making athlete. They could, they may next year try to upgrade at that position. Now, Kamal Martin is an explosive player, and they need to get him on the field. But right now, Chris Barnes is just what the doctor ordered. They need someone who is really steady, who is instinctual. I mean, you could tell he doesn't take false steps. He goes right to the ball. He's tough. He's just what they need, and I think we're going to see a lot more of him and Martin together.
Thanks so much, Jim, for your question, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We will be back tomorrow to continue to preview this upcoming weekend's game against the Titans and to give you all the updates from practice. For Tom Silverstein, I am Olivia Reiner. We'll see you next time.